Thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. Please,
like and subscribe. How did that become my job?
because you're so good at
All
it.
right.
It's
Like
so-
and subscribe.
It's your
All
job.
right, that's my job.
Also, if you're interested in any financial planning, don't forget to call our guy, Andy McCollum with Resource One, and you can reach him at 636-458-1798. And if you need any tech help or web help, reach out to CS Design, our buddy Chris there at 573-436-3717. They did our intro, outro, logo, soon-to-be website, and all that good stuff. So lots of good stuff coming. And that being said, today is going to be a really cool episode. You notice we got a cool guest with us today. Her name is VonDina, and I've known her since she was, probably 13, 14?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's got an interesting story. There's so much to tell, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, kind of getting to catch up a little bit and seeing what God's doing in your life. And then I think there's going to be a lot of things we'll kind of branch off in there. I know my wife literally texted me some questions she had for you based on some of the stuff. So, no, I told her about
It's
this.
all good.
It's Dia Day VonDina.
That's right.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's right. So, that being said, let's kick it in. Tell me a little bit about you, VonDina.
I am a mom of 4 wonderful children. I tell people all the time, with everything that I have ever attempted to do in life, parenting is the only thing I got right.
So far.
That's so far. Peach
far.
cobbler and parenting.
That's
Those
right.
are the only 2 things that I can vouch
Sounds
for.
like a book.
You do peach cobbler too?
Yes.
Huh. We'll have to remember that.
Sounds like a good title of a book.
It sounds not just a good.
Right?
Parenting and peach cobbler.
All right.
Well, something to think about.
But outside of being a mom, I am a business owner. I also have a corporate job. I work in the corporate world. I started Vow LLC, which is my sewing business. I started sewing when I was a sophomore in high school when I learned that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So I had to drop dance and vocal because it was too active or too much activity with the body.
I didn't realize that you did the sewing until I started kind of following you on social media. And for people who are looking right now, they're seeing one of the designs you put out, which was a really cool dress that you made for, I think, for a Sunday morning. But amazing. So if they want to get something like that, how would they reach out to you on that?
My Instagram is Val81. And my business Facebook is also Val81.
Okay.
Vow is V-O-W?
VOW.
All right.
Yeah, when we get done with the episode, let me know, and we'll make sure we put that as part of our
Yeah, we can put a little link. Or...
a little link to it, so when
Absolutely.
people are watching, they can catch it on everything. So
Yeah, I get up early on Sunday morning. I make my dress for church. It's the craziest thing. It's the adrenaline
Okay.
from it.
Is that mainly what you do? Dresses and
Dresses. I make T-shirts.
Okay.
Made the shirt that I have on. But I do more in the corporate world than I do
Okay.
in my side hustle.
Yeah.
but it is
found
your
a way.
side
It's
hustle.
my balance.
It would be really cool
Yeah.
if that became a full-time hustle. We kind of look at that with the podcast. We love doing this on the side, but hey, it'd be cool if God made it bigger.
I don't know if I like.
You like where you're at right now.
All right.
I'll just put a pin there.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what God's plan is, but I do love sewing for others, but I strategically choose who I sew for. I've gotten a lot of balance, but I've also gotten a lot of people love to draw away from your gift and your talent for their own benefit. And so it kind of steered me away in a negative way. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm sewing for myself.
Yeah.
But
It's hard to say no sometimes.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm guilty of that.
it
All right.
is.
So you do the sewing, the corporate. Is that something you got into early? Is that something you got into later?
Corporate or
Yeah.
sewing?
Corporate.
Corporate. So I would say career-wise, I got into it later. I always been in the banking field, and then I didn't get into the finance field until maybe 12 years ago.
Okay. All right.
So I'm working in my 12th year at
That's awesome.
at our company.
Very, very cool.
Yep.
And then, so keep going. Tell us a little bit. Keep telling people about you for a second. You've had a lot of experiences here. We got to start digging into a little bit. Yeah, I mean,
Teen mom. Got pregnant at 14. Had my son at 15. He was 2 months early, so I had a NICU baby. Kid. Probably one of the. That's my miracle kid. I have a miracle kid and I have a grace kid.
Okay.
that's your miracle
That's
kid.
my miracle
one was a
kid. My
miracle.
first one is my miracle.
Okay.
And now, what's he doing now? Because I think there's a little bit of a story there now, right? He's
Yes.
doing some acting, right?
Yes, my son is a triple threat to the theater society. He sings, he dances, he acts. He's done a off-Broadway show in New York for a 16 week residency. He has a show coming up May 7th through the 21st with the Black Repertory Theater
Awesome.
called UB. Yeah, he was 2 pounds 11 ounces. Doctor gave him actually told Josh Yoke, he said go and prepare his mom for her death because he's only going to live 24 hours and the kid is 26 years old. So I thank God for that.
Yeah.
We're going to get into a little bit about Josh Yoke because I think there's a little bit of a story there too. I mean, that's a very interesting dynamic that you guys developed over the years, and I think it's very, very special because you just don't see that there. So for those who are listening, let me just put Josh up here. We'll get into this a little bit.
Does he have formal training, or you just he had a knack for it?
So I put him in the performing arts school once he started. So he's always been in a performing arts school. I did not know that the kid had talent.
Yeah.
I only put him there because I went to the high school
Yeah.
and I wanted him to go to the high school. So I put him in the elementary school.
Right.
And by the time he was in third grade, he had gotten selected by COCA, the Center of Creative Arts.
Yeah.
They went out to the schools and they would have kids auditions for
Yeah.
spots. And the teacher at that time, her name was Miss Lee. She just passed away this year, a couple months ago. And she reached out to me and she was like, your kid has a thing for dance. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, my kid? Like Robert? Like what? And she was like, we're willing to offer him a full scholarship. And I was like, well, I don't have a way to get him there.
Right.
And she was like, no problem. We'll pick him up
That's
from
amazing.
school. We'll drop him off at
Yeah.
home. And by the time he was in sixth grade, he was pre-professional dance.
Wow.
His specialty, I think, is tap. But he knows all genres of dance. He can sing in almost any tenor or bass octave in vocal.
Wow.
The kid is the kid.
Yeah.
Like-
Did he? Was that environmental? Like, did he see you dancing, singing around the house, or
No.
He just
Literally
I don't
picked
know.
that up. Huh? That's interesting.
No.
he just always had it in him.
Yeah.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is really, really cool.
All right, so we got Miracle Baby.
Yeah, well, and not just Miracle Baby. How old were you?
I was 15 when I had Rob.
Yeah. And where were you at that time?
What do you mean?
You were in the Blumeyer, right?
Yes, I was in Blumeyer Housing Projects.
Yeah, that's something to bring up because
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur and in the corporate world, and you came from the Blumeyer
Yeah.
Housing Project. I mean,
Yeah. Well, explain to the listeners what Blumeyer.
So Blumeyer Housing, again, it's a project.
Yeah.
It's the urban area. Gun violence,
Yeah.
robberies, everything. And I will say that, like, living down there, I seen some things, but I did not see things that, like, you think you see that goes on in the projects. I didn't see a whole bunch of stuff, but I seen enough.
Right. It wasn't directly. Maybe it wasn't
directly
trauma.
targeted towards
Yeah.
me. I would say the only direct trauma towards me was that I ended up in a domestic abusive relationship, which was with Robert's father.
Right.
But outside of that, like, there wasn't anybody like shooting up my house or
Mm-hmm.
coming at me or my mom or my
Right.
siblings or anything. Yes, I've had friends who got murdered.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the wrong place at the wrong time where a bullet just literally missed me and hit the tree, like it hit.
Yeah.
So
Jeez.
yeah. So
Well, that sounds a little traumatic.
well,
I mean,
the Blumeyer was a housing project. Out of the housing projects in St. Louis, I would have considered it more of a moderate. It was because it was surrounded by SLU, It tended to be slightly more protected compared to like the Cochrane Housing
Yeah,
Project.
compared to like Cochrane or
Yeah.
Is it older or is it a newer
it was
development?
older when I was down there.
Okay.
Now they have literally torn down
Yeah.
all the houses that we lived in, and they kind of rebuilt it. They changed the name to the
Okay.
Renaissance at Grand.
Okay.
So it's not. I don't really hear about anything that
Yeah.
goes on down there now. But
Maybe
yeah,
it
it
got
was.
cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they kind of cleaned it up. A lot of the people who I know, who I grew up with, they kind of like moved out,
Right.
kind of generated to maybe like South City.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the older people are still down there. They probably would never.
Yeah. That's their
It's like the
spot.
church,
Yeah,
right?
that's their
You're
spot.
not moving.
The other thing I remember about you being down there was who raised you.
My grandmother raised
That's
me
right.
until her passing. She raised me. My mom was in the house, but my mom was an alcoholic, so it's like she was there, but she wasn't presently
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So I was raised by my grandmother, and she passed when I was in 8th grade.
What was her name?
Pearlie Mae Whitfield.
Pearlie Mae
Pearlie
Whitfield. I
Mae.
like that name.
That's a great name
I
too.
had a feeling it was gonna be a nice name.
Yeah, so my grandmother raised me. She passed when I was in 8th grade, and it seems like the trauma just started racing in.
Mm-hmm.
At
Eighth
that
grade. So
point,
8th grade, you're 13.
I was 13. Yeah.
And that's where right after that she would.
Right after that, I got pregnant. Um,
Did you notice a change in yourself after that happened?
I did not.
Just kinda.
The only thing that I knew at that moment was that my grandmother was my protector, and I
Yeah.
needed protection.
Right.
And so I ended up in this relationship hoping for protection, but
Right.
then I needed protection from the relationship. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that's kind of where Josh Yoke came
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Let's.
That's a hard decision to make when you're 14.
Yeah.
Choosing who's going to protect you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So Yoke is up there. People are looking at him. So there's a little something different about Yoke, right?
Yeah, so Josh is Rob's godfather. He pulled me out of a lot of because we had the co-ed basketball team.
Right. That's how I met her. Just so we're clear, I met her because Josh said, "Hey, can you help out with this co-ed basketball team at Third Baptist?" He was acting as an intern youth minister at that time there, and I immediately, when I was on a basketball team and kind of helping out, immediately identified you guys kind of had this special relationship. It wasn't the normal relationship. I think there was something about you that he identified with, and of course his background from where he came from, I think led to that. But you guys had this special relationship almost from the start. It seemed like very quickly.
Yeah, so Josh met my grandmother, and so he had multiple conversations with her. And before her passing, she apparently told Josh to look after me because I was special. I don't know what that means. I'm still trying to find the special part.
Oh, you're special.
I'm still looking for it. But yeah, so Josh, he looked out for me, like he to a whole nother level. There's been times where he has put himself in danger to keep my son's father from swinging on me, or we would be on the van going to a game, and he would be pulling my hair, or calling me out of my name, and different things like that. And Josh would always make himself present and available. When Rob was coming home from Josh, me and Josh were the only two people to go to the hospital every single day to see Robert while he was in NICU. And then when he was coming home, Josh came to our house. He painted the room, just made sure Robert had basic essentials.
Yeah.
When Robert went to college, he actually went in Chicago. He did a year at Roosevelt University.
Oh.
And so Josh bought a house with the room for Robert in case he decided to stay in Chicago.
Wow.
So yeah, he's always looked out for us. He's always been there. He's always.
Yeah.
I tried to get him on, by the way. I actually tried to see if I could get him, with his work schedule, to be able to call in and talk to us a little bit. But he said he couldn't, but he would definitely be checking out this episode. So I told him I can't talk about VonDina without bringing him up and that relationship.
It's an integral part of my life.
And actually, I want to read this because this is I think kind of sums up a little bit. I hope you don't mind. This was on your Facebook, but I thought this was a really cool thing. It said in 1994. I left my church, CMBC, and started going to Third Baptist Church. I was led there by one of the only white youth pastors who would come into the Blumeyer projects to recruit our youth. I built a relationship with Christ and got baptized at that church on December 10th, 1995. I also built a friendship with Josh, which has turned into a sibling relationship. True on that. In 1997, I had Robert, and I was suicidal in my state of mind. I was a single mom, struggling to make while experiencing verbal and physical abuse. Joshua took it upon himself to be Robert's godfather, and I'm eternally grateful for you. Josh was at the hospital every day that Robert was there, and God will place people in your life for many different reasons. And at that time, it was like this, this white man was helping me out. But as I got older, the pieces made more sense to me. Thank you for saving my life and being the greatest godfather my son could ever have. Happy birthday, Josh. I saw that and I just had to print that because that really defines in my mind your relationship. It really went from youth pastor and youth to just this interesting dynamic, and I love to have him on here because he's got an incredible story too. One day maybe he'll be able to tell it, but you know your story of how he played in that, and the fact, and you kind of pointed this out in there, he was a white youth pastor. Most white people weren't going down in the Blumeyer Hood or in the
Yeah.
Cochrane or places like that.
And Josh would walk. He would walk from Third Baptist over to Blumeyer to round us up, and I'm like, is this man crazy? Like,
A little
like
bit.
you don't just
Little
do
bit.
that. You know,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, and I had just moved to Blumeyer as well. So like, I grew up in Midtown, in another urban part of the city. So I had just moved into Blumeyer, and I'm like, is this man crazy? Like, you don't just come down here. Like, you don't just enter into these people's territory and just,
Right.
But everybody was so they were so accepting of Josh, and we would all just walk over. And then Miss Betty, rest in peace. I love her.
Oh yeah, Miss Betty.
Miss Betty, she would drive the van, and because some of us would get lazy and didn't want to walk across. It literally was probably 2 blocks. But
Hey,
she
if
would,
somebody's gonna do it,
yeah. But she would come. She would get the van, and she
that's
would
awesome.
come pick us up. And Third Baptist was a good time.
It was a great time.
Third Baptist, yeah.
Yeah, that's why when I found that picture I showed you earlier, it just brought back all flood of memories about the basketball, about hanging out with those guys. It was fun, and I just got to kind of be on that part, in that aspect, more of a backseat driver a little bit. But it was so fun. It was great to see God working in your lives, and to see how God took this interesting guy in Josh Yoke, and he wasn't scared of anything. He just would go in, and he just knew God was before him, and he was just going to love on people. So,
awesome.
yeah,
I wish
yeah.
I wish I could meet him.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get him on here sometime because he's got an interesting story.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be good.
So, if you don't mind me asking, we can move on if you want. But when you were pregnant with your first child, I would imagine there were some thoughts. What am I gonna do? You ended up choosing to keep your son.
This is actually very interesting. I didn't know I was pregnant.
Okay.
So apparently I had gotten pregnant July 96. I did not know I was pregnant maybe until October, November. I was just learning my body. I had literally probably just started my menstrual. So missing a menstrual for me, it wasn't abnormal because I wasn't really used to having it. And so I reached out to one of the other youth directors. I think she was a college intern, Jennifer, and I reached out to her.
Yeah.
And I was like, is something wrong with my body? Like, and so I told her what was going on, and she went and got a pregnancy test. And she was like, here, just take it in the bathroom. I'm like, I'm not taking a pregnancy test in church. Like, God is not going to send me to hell. I was so I waited till I got home, and I took the pregnancy test, and I found out I was pregnant. And I told my mom, and my mom worked at a liquor store, which was so convenient.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom was telling like her boss them about it, and was telling them about this pregnancy, and they were telling her, no, I'm sorry. First, my mom called my dad, and my dad, he was saying, I need to get an abortion. My mom goes to work, tell her boss and her coworkers, and they were telling her, she needs to get an abortion. She's not going to finish high school. She's going to drop out. And so when my mom came home and told me that, in my mind immediately, it was like, I got to have this baby because I have to prove to them that I'm not statistical. And then they were telling my mom that by the time I was 21, I was going to have 4 kids. And it was-
They're just putting
Actually,
goals
I
in.
was 32 when I had 4.
So it sounds like for you, you were receiving those as kind of like personal goals. Like, hey,
I had to
Yeah,
at that point. I
yeah.
had a point to prove because, and I don't want to say I was I don't want to say I was the smartest out of the kids in our house, but I will say I was the more determined. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I had it all laid out. And so for them to say I was not going to do this, it was like, we'll just wait and see. I still graduated on time. I did change from being a doctor, but it was the blood thing for me
Yeah.
that I couldn't
Oh, yeah.
do.
It's very time
Yes.
consuming too to become one.
Yeah.
I did not get to go to a HBCU like I wanted, but I did get a college degree.
Yeah.
I did not get it in 4 years like I expected, but I did get a college degree. And I think that's kind of the point that everybody was missing or missed in life, period. Like, you may not get the things that you want at the timeline that you think that you want to have it, but graduating with a degree at 21 is just as important as graduating with a degree at 35.
Yeah.
Amen.
So, that was that. It was just the determination of just trying to prove to everybody
Yeah.
that I can raise this kid. I was working by the time I was 16. I moved out by the time a week before I turned 18, so like 17-ish, 18. I moved out, took care of my child, did what I needed to do, stayed out of trouble. So for me, again, it was just trying to prove to people, like, you don't get to tell me what happens with my life because of
Right.
decisions that I
Right.
choose to make.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, I was just trying to, because like I said, we were talking about having to choose a protector. That's a big decision. What to do with a baby. That's a huge decision. Did you? I mean, I would imagine you had someone giving you something, anything, friends,
My
teachers,
godmother,
godmother.
my godmother was very, very active
Yeah.
in my life. At that time, I did not have a relationship. Me and my father are thick as thieves today.
Yeah.
But back then, me and my dad, we did not have a relationship. And it was just the interference of my grandmother and my mother. It was a whole lot of whatever. But so me and my dad, we didn't have a relationship then. But if I needed anything, I knew I could call my dad and get it.
Okay.
I would just have to break my ego, which was something that I wasn't willing to do. I've always been a very prideful person, and my ego does get me in trouble sometimes.
Join the club.
I tend
I
to.
was thinking the same thing. I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar.
I've always had my own level of independence, which was something that I had to learn after I had been sexually assaulted by one of my brother's father. So when I went and told my mom that, it was like she didn't believe me type thing. But that could have also been her own insecurity, because that's how she gets to hold on to this man, because she can make everything about me disappear or not address it. So there were a lot of things I found out about my mom as I got older and learned things about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my godmother, however, before I came to Third Baptist and after I left Third Baptist, I went to my home church, which is Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, which is where my godmother was the minister of music.
Is that where you go now?
I actually do not go to Calvary anymore. I left Calvary maybe 3 years ago. I go to Olivet Missionary Baptist Church. So my godmother, she would pick me up every Sunday. Her thing was she always wanted to keep me in the presence of God. So my godmother, she made sure I had what I needed, anything throughout school. If I needed something for school, like senior dues or just whatever, she
Yeah.
just wanted to make my life as comfortable as she could.
Yeah.
So she played her role, and they don't make godmothers the way they made them back then. Now it's just kind of like a title,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm this
Oh, yeah.
kid's godmother or godfather.
Right.
But my godmother, she really lived up to what the position that God gave her.
Yeah.
And forever grateful for that.
Sounds like it. Yeah. That's awesome.
So tell me a little bit more about your kids. I'm really interested to hear about your kids. So you had obviously I knew about your first one, but and I know that he's doing the acting. But tell me about the others. I'm a little more curious about them.
Okay,
So
so Jayla is 20. She is a sophomore at Norfolk State University,
wow.
and her major, coincidentally, is theater.
Following her brother, hey?
Yeah, so she's definitely following her brother.
That's cool.
But Robert is more of the performer. I think Jayla wants to do more of the directing and filming.
Awesome.
So she wants to be more behind the scenes. This is the one who I said is my introvert. Like she'll get out into the crowd, but then when she hibernates, she hibernates. Like it's nap time. It's nap time.
Yep.
So you have Jay, then you have Brian. I'll come back to Brian because his story is a whole nother. That's my grace child.
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a minute. We'll just say that you got
Yeah, I
Brian,
have
and we're gonna
Brian.
get into that
Brian
because
is a
that's
sophomore in high school, and then I have Chloe. Brian is the visual artist, so he likes to draw. He's a gamer, and I think I'm gonna take pride in saying this. I think Brian is going to follow me in maybe the finance field. He's already starting to ask about like stocks and investments, which is funny because I'm like, yo, look up,
Right.
the 10 best stocks, for 2023, and we can look into it. And
That'd be
he's
cool.
like, lazy, like he don't like he like, hey, you just tell me, and I'm like, no, I want you to learn.
Yeah.
you know
That might go well. He might learn how to work smarter, not harder.
yeah, so
exactly.
I have plans to I'm actually on FMLA right now, but I have plans when I go back to work because I work with some of the top advisors in the country to see if maybe one of them can give him maybe a phone call on
Yeah.
just like the basics, or investments for dummies, or
Yeah.
and then I have
Internships.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And then Chloe. Chloe is my that last child.
Yes, I know the last
baby.
child.
They don't care about nothing.
They really don't.
They don't care about nothing. Chloe doesn't care about anything, but she cares about everything. I got a call from her teacher like last week, and Chloe got a B. And the teacher was like, she just went in the bathroom, she starts crying, and she's like flipping out. And I was like, Chloe don't do bees.
Right.
Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, she does not do bees. She make bets. If I can get all A's, all 4 quarters, can we work something out?
Yeah.
So she's very serious about her grades.
That's awesome.
She is she's the one where Saturday I'm taking her to a football game. She wants to go to every single game that the school has. It doesn't matter what sport it is.
Oh, that's
She's
cool.
very outgoing, very active. She has a very Chloe has a voice, and I don't think that she knows she has the voice. She wants to go into theater as well, so she'll be going to Central VPA next year. But I think that Chloe's going to end up in politics or some type of social justice. Her voice is very powerful, and when she talks, people listen.
Mm-hmm. She means what she says.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
That's really, really cool. So you have all the kids now. You said the last one. How old were you when the last one? You said 32.
I think I was 32. She's 14. I'm 41. So.
Okay, and so you do
Somewhere
college at
around
that time.
Yeah, somewhere around ish. Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else that's interesting from the time of having firstborn to the 32? You go to college. You graduate.
Go to college. I graduate.
All while raising children, mind you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Don't
I mean,
forget
I'm overwhelmed all the time. Yeah.
I'm sure there's some things collectively, but mostly trauma kind of happened in between the time of before having Robert, after having Robert, maybe in between Jayla.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious. We haven't talked forever, so I was kind of filling in some gaps in our life. So I know you're going to college and you
I was
have
too
these
busy
other
having
kids.
children. I don't
Yeah.
know if.
Yeah, well, we all were. I was having kids during that time too, right?
Experiencing my mom, all her kids were all out of the house. She says that that there's a period of time which she calls it the head down time, where like she didn't even know what movies were coming out in the 90s. She didn't know like anything about anything except I got my family and that like. So I don't know if you were experiencing that, like you've had your head down for the last kind of
Yeah,
15, 20 years, just plowing through and
yeah, cause
making sure everybody's taken care of.
after Jayla, I was trying to launch a nonprofit, Girls Under Construction, which is actually the shirt I have on. And then I got pregnant with Brian, and I was like, I can't I can't do this. Like I don't have time. It was to help motivate teen girls or teen moms, and just kind of let them know, hey, I've been through this. I can help you through this.
Right.
That was the purpose of it.
Well, that's awesome.
And it just like died. I was like, I can't do this. I had gotten pregnant. I was like, I can't help nobody railroad their life when I'm derailing mine. You know,
Right.
I felt because I kept having children, I felt like a disappointment. Because I knew what my goals were, and it was like I kept slacking. I kept getting pregnant. I couldn't get my
That wasn't
life.
slacking. No, but
No, that's what I felt. You know,
Yeah.
those were those emotions that I felt like I can't help nobody. I can't do this. And so when I finally did launch Girls Under Construction, I put the two behind it. And people was like, what does the two mean? I'm like, God of a second chance, because I was supposed to have done this 14,
Right.
15 years ago. And then God gave me grace to start
awesome.
it over.
so is that still going right now?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
And does that have a website or any way they can reach out on that?
The website is not complete, but I do a lot of things through my personal page. I just posted yesterday where I am giving away a $1,000 scholarship to a high school senior who has who maybe was a teen mom and kept pushing, or has experienced some unexpected trauma, or just life happens.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to focus on how can I say this? I don't want to focus on those kids who kind of already have it together. Or
Yeah, yeah.
have,
Well, you're
have
trying to
it
help.
on their
You want to
shoulders.
be a
Like, I want to help
support.
the ones who just don't know which way their life is about to go. So yes, I did announce that. For the past 5 years, I've been giving away $1,000 out of my own money.
Well, let's
So-
we got people watching this, so if anybody wants to help out, reach out to us. We'll put you in touch with VonDina, and she would be glad to help use that to help expand the vision, right?
Yeah.
So that'd be awesome. I think it's really, really cool. I mean, you've gone through an awful lot. Just the fact you made it out of Blumeyer and where you're at today just blows my mind away. I just I mean, you're
Wait till we dig deeper then if that blows your mind.
well, we're about ready to hop into some of that real quick here, but I mean, it just blows my mind away watching. When I'm on outside watching somebody who was 13, 14 years old on a basketball team in a place like the Blumeyer, and if I had to think 20, 30 years out, would I've seen VonDina where she is today? It'd be hard for me to imagine. 4 kids, one doing awesome on Broadway, one in college. Two doing really, really well, and in your own career, they're doing. I didn't even know you knew about sewing, and then all of a sudden I'm looking online, watching you make all this cool stuff, and I'm like, that's awesome. That is, you got an entrepreneur, and I love being an entrepreneur myself, so I just love that spirit in you. And in the corporate world, I mean, it's like you're conquering everything.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
It's about your faith. You mentioned the day you got baptized. Would you consider prior to that? Did you believe everything you heard about Jesus?
Yes. So
Like since a kid?
again,
Yeah.
I've been in church my whole entire life. My dad is a preacher.
Yeah.
Probably one of the greatest theologians I have. And I'm not just saying that because that's my father, but my dad, he packs a lot of knowledge, but he's so quiet to where you would like have to start a conversation with him in order to get it out of him.
Yeah.
But yes, my mom, my dad, they met at Calvary where I grew up. I have always believed in Jesus. I personally do not believe in smaller kids and children getting baptized. Because I don't think there's really a level of understanding. Like, yes, we hear about it,
Yeah,
but we don't
agree.
really know.
Yeah, I agree.
So I didn't get baptized until I got to Third Baptist because they explained Jesus to me different. They explained Jesus to me in their serving. And that was something that was kind of missing from the church where I came from. So to actually see the service, and Josh, I don't know if you ever went, but they used to take us on mission trips. So they took us to North Carolina and we redid somebody's roof on their house, and then we repainted somebody else's house. To me, that's what Jesus looks like. To actually be in the field and doing the dirty work. And so I was like, I gotta give Jesus my life, because this is the type of person that I want to be. Like, I want to help people. I want to be in the field. I want to do the dirty work.
Well, that's it. I think what you're saying in it is that that service drew you, and I look at those who do it. I mean, that's a really part of who God is, right? I mean, he came to serve mankind, right? And he gave his life up, and he's called us all to jump in. I think there's a lot of good ministries even here in St. Louis. For those who don't know, we're going to be having one of those guys hopefully on here, where he goes and buys houses and redoes them for folks in inner city St. Louis or East St. Louis. Um, I've been helping out their ministry for a while, and I actually did one of the mission trips, but I didn't do the one you guys did with Third Baptist. I was helping out a church down Grand, and did a couple down there. We had some great times, but I think that those also, when you start serving people, it changes your perspective.
Yeah, it does. I told my kids, I said, one of the places that I want girls under construction to go is I want a transitional house. Because every girl young with a baby don't have a place to go.
Right. Safe
Yes.
place. Yeah.
And I told them, I said, I want a transitional house. I want to be able to provide a safe place for them. And not just for teen moms, but I know what it felt like to be sexually molested by somebody and not have a outlet, or not be able to tell anybody. I didn't want to tell my grandmother, because obviously she would have killed them.
Right.
Like literally.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I know. I believed you. Yeah.
So it was like I never told her. I just recently opened up to my brothers about it. And hypothetically, my brother, who father it is, my brother, he's institutionalized right now, and his dad is also. And so when they were in the same jail downtown at the Justice Center, his dad told them that he could not be in the same space as my brother, because he didn't know if I had told my brother or not.
Right.
But at that time, I did not tell my brother, because I know I raised my brothers. And so the level of protection that they have over me is just different. And so they look at me more as a caregiver for them. And so they are super protective. And I didn't want my brother to get in any more trouble than what he was already in. And so I was like, I can't tell, I can't tell him this. But
Right.
he ended up finding out I gave like a testimony or something on Facebook, and I included it because his dad literally got arrested for the same thing.
Right.
And can I just stick a pin right there too?
Yeah,
Because a lot of people was like, well, how do you feel? You don't want justice. And I was like, I was like, at this point, like it happened when I was like 12 or 11 or 12. And I was just like, nah. And then when I saw on the news that he had been arrested for doing it to somebody else, you can only play with God for so long before it's like your kid, mama,
Yeah.
mama,
Yeah. Yeah.
before so long that mama it gets agitating, and it's like stop,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's how God is. You can only get away with doing things for so long before God decides that okay, I'm going to
Vengeance is needed.
get you
Yeah.
for this,
Yeah.
And so although I did not get, in a sense, for other people, did not get justice for what he did to me, I did get justice.
Right.
So I just wanted to say, whoever may be going through that space, you may think that that person is not being punished for it. It may be a sickness that may come 10 to 20 years from now that they may have to deal with, and God will remind them of what they did to you. So just
Yeah. That's you have strong faith in God's justice being carried out. I like that.
Yeah. Well,
I like that.
that's awesome. And your brothers. So you mentioned kind of raising your brothers. How are they all doing? So.
my brothers are they're really good. I have 4 brothers, and then I have a sister by my mom, and they struggled a little after our mom passed away. But I will say I have again, one is institutionalized.
Are they all younger than you?
Yes, I'm the oldest.
Okay.
I took in my 2 younger siblings when my mom passed, so
Yeah.
I was raising 6 kids at one point. I was up there with you, Josh. Was raising 6. It was a
Gee.
very, very, it was difficult.
Yeah.
Because I raised my kids a certain way, my mom raised her kids a certain way, so there was a clashing in respect. Because my 2 younger siblings, they look at me as a sibling, but my 3 brothers who are right under me, they don't look at me that way. Their level of respect for me is different, because they know what it's like to grow up in a house with an alcoholic mom, and so I took care of them literally. Like I
Right.
had to buy their school clothes, I had to buy their shoes, and
You
I
were
had
you
to.
were you were their mother.
Yeah, like, and I try to stray away from saying that because I know how difficult it is for them
Yeah.
to not have her. But yes, I had to step in and be their mom at some point,
Yeah.
and help them and take care of them. And my 2 younger siblings was at a point where my mom found out she had cancer, so it was like the drinking stopped, the smoking stopped, so they got a better piece of her than what we experienced. And I'm not taking anything away from her as far as being a mom because I learned a lot even through the alcoholism. I learned a lot through the sickness, but I learned more after she passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so taking them in, it was like, you're not my mother. My children do not even curse in front of me. And so my brother had gotten so comfortable to where he would like curse, and I'm like, yo, like,
That's that what a dynamic
like
switch that had
Yeah.
to be.
crossing boundaries,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, there are new boundaries too, right? I mean,
Yes,
so
and
that's the difficulty.
it was, they wanted me to, even my other brothers, everybody wanted me to teach them how to grieve or how to get past this, and I didn't even know how to do it. I never lost a mom before, you
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
so it was like I never processed my grandmother's loss. I didn't really know what grief was at that time. It was like you go to the funeral, you cry, and then you don't think about it anymore. And so I did not grieve my grandmother until 20 years later when my mother passed. And I started going to therapy, and my therapist had me to write a letter to my 6-year-old self and tell her everything that was going to happen to her by the time she was 35. And so to uproot all of those emotions, and he said, include everything you felt when these things was happening. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know what that means. Like, what are emotions?
Right. Yeah.
What are emotions?
What are the right emotions?
How do you write it, you
Yeah.
know? And so then I had to go to the park and I had to read the letter out to myself out loud and allow myself to feel that. And so I was just like, dang, like I really have been through some stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't really know until you have to put it on paper. And so again, people wanted me to help them and guide them and lead them, and I was lost. And that was the first time where I was actually able to admit that I was lost. So I lost my mom 4 months later. Me and my kid's father, we had been together 16 years. I had to let that relationship go. I took a lot of L's in that season. I
Yeah,
took a
well,
lot.
you know, God puts us in those valleys so that He can grow us, right? And so it sounds like it was also a time of growth for you.
Yeah.
If you're having to work through and deal with the things maybe you hadn't dealt with, I mean, that seems like God saying, let's just pause here and let's take this in for a second and let's work through these things. So, and I think that probably helped you with what we're getting probably ready to jump in here shortly, which is your son's situation. Can you imagine dealing with that and not dealing with the other stuff?
Well, I mean, it would just be compounded, right? I mean,
Yes,
if you ever did get around to it, everything
it just
that
would
happened,
have
yeah.
stacked
So what's the date that all happened? I want to see if do you remember the date?
of
When your son goes to school on a normal school day. How old is he, by the way?
24th.
October 24th, she said.
October 24th is the
I knew every parent I know that goes through a trauma like that remembers that day. Well, they're like, I'll never forget that day.
Yes.
And so October 24th, not all that long ago. This was last year. What happens?
Okay, so I'm gonna walk y'all walk you through this day.
Yeah, and hold on real quick. For those who are watching, we're going to jump into the story. I'm going to put a little clip up so you guys can kind of see an overview of what's going on. So go ahead.
October 24th, I just dropped Chloe off at school. I drop her off first, and then I drop off Brian. Let me go back. That Friday before, we had just gotten an email from the school that said the gates of the school will lock at 7:10 a.m. starting Monday the 24th. So we were literally rushing. Get to Brian's school at exactly 7:10. He's he's jumping out. The ISS teacher was standing there. He let Brian in. He locked the gate.
And the school he goes to is
Central Visual Performing Arts
yeah.
High School.
Yeah, we call it VAP, right?
it VAP.
Yep, and he's there for what's his gift? Because you got to have a little bit of a gift to go there.
He's a visual artist, so he draws. That's why he wanted to go. Brian had just transferred to VAP maybe 4 or 5 weeks before.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, he had just transferred. He was going to Career Academy. Got to VAP, and we just started seeing like a whole different personality. Like he was coming in the house, he was smiling, he was happy, he was, it just brought out.
He was enjoying it.
Yeah, VAP has a way in doing that though. I don't know if many know a lot about VAP and what goes on the inside of the school. That's where I graduated from. That's where all my children graduated from. That's where Chloe is going. But VAP is a free-spirited school. You get to be you without judgment. And so we started seeing more of his personality once he started going there, in which the whole house was happy about.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So again,
Of course.
ISS teacher locks the gate. I get to work. I have on these big platform shoes. We were just navigating kind of back into the office. They put us on like a 2-day hybrid schedule. And so my cousin works with me, and we always walk to get crushed ice. Because there were only certain ice machines that do crush. So we're walking to get crushed ice. I was on FaceTime with Jayla. Jayla would FaceTime me almost every morning. So I'm on FaceTime with her. And I said, Brian's FaceTiming me. And this was at 9:17 a.m. And I said, Brian's FaceTiming me. Let me call you back. Brian never calls me
Right.
for nothing.
Yeah.
And I answers, and he says, Mama, I'm shot.
Whoa.
And I said, why you ain't in class?
Yeah.
Like,
Just over your head.
Black mama kicked in. Like, why are you not in class? And he said, I was in class. It never registered to me that there was a shooter in the school because what I'm seeing on his FaceTime is outside. So I'm like, did he leave the school to go to Quick Trip, or that's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Maybe he got caught in a crossfire. And so it takes my cousin to explain what happened in those seconds. I can only go off what she told me.
Yeah.
She said I went from a shock to a fear in the matter of seconds. And all I remember is I kicked off my shoes. And this is probably my first time like really going through detail. So if I start crying or something,
You're fine. Yeah, and we got.
If you need to pause, we can pause it. We
Yeah.
can stop recording. It's not.
Yeah, hold on. I'll even get some tissues.
We want you to be comfortable in it. And honestly, if we can't get to it,
no, it's fine. I
okay,
can talk about it, but so he
so he's on the phone. He's talking.
So
to you.
I told him, I said, don't hang up. So I have him on FaceTime. I have two phones.
Okay.
So I have him on FaceTime. My other phone was at my desk. I kicked off my shoes. I'm running. My cousin, everything, my AirPods fell out. Everything I dropped, she was like trying to pick up to catch me. I'm probably going 100 miles per hour through Wells Fargo. And I get to my manager's office and I said, my son just got shot. I gotta go. And she's like, what? So I'm literally running as I'm telling her this. So now she's chasing me, her and one of our other coworkers, and my cousins. I have 3 women chasing me. And I'm just trying to get back to my desk, grab my stuff. My manager, she threw her card into, because we just transitioned under her team. And so she threw her card into my purse. But then she told my cousin, she said, she's going to be all over the place, I'm going to keep in contact with you
Yeah.
to see what it is that she may need, keep me updated.
Yeah.
So at the same time, what I didn't know until later was that another girl who was a part of another team, she heard me say my son was shot. Her kid also went there, so it prompted her to call
Yeah.
her kid as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So I get to my car, and I call the kid's father, and I said, "Hey, Brian was shot."
Yeah.
So, call my other supervisor. So I'm trying to call. I'm keeping him on this phone, calling everybody else on my other phone. I'm going down 40, get to Kings Highway. As you can imagine, it's
Plugged in.
chaotic.
Yeah.
Like you can't get it, you can't
Nowhere
get
close.
through. So now I'm really panicking.
Yeah.
His phone has, for whatever reason, cut off. So now I've lost contact with him. So then I get right at Southwest and Kings Highway, right there. And he calls me from EMT and he says, "Mom, I'm on my way to Children's." He wasn't crying or panicking. Hold on, let me go back. When he said he was shot, I said, "Why you weren't in class?" He said I was. He flashed his hoodie,
Yeah.
which was like full of blood. So that was the realization that, oh my God, my baby really
He's
is
not
shot.
playing. Yeah.
So after he had gotten shot, he jumped out of a 2-story window and then had to climb a fence. He had been shot in both hands.
How many gunshots altogether? Do we know? Did you? I thought you said 5, but I could be wrong.
He had,
It's not the end of the world if you don't remember.
injected in both, went in both wrists, came out of both hands. He has fragments of bullets in his right wrist. And then they told us initially that he got grazed by his ear. Got grazed on his ear. They did a CAT scan because they said if he jumped out the window, they wanted to make sure he didn't have any internal damages or bleeding or anything.
Absolutely.
So they do this CT scan and they was like, he has a bullet in his neck. I'm like, what? Like, you gotta be kidding me, right?
Oh my.
So that was the point in the hospital that I lost it.
Yeah.
Because he had already called, this was before the CT scan, he called me from a nurse's phone. And by this time, he realized he's shot. So he's going ballistic.
Yeah. He's like seeing.
He was just like, "Mama, mama," and I'm just like, what do I do? Like, what do I say? Like, I couldn't, nothing could come out.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Hey," I said, "it's gonna be okay.
Right.
You're going to be okay." And I said, "Your dad is here too." I had to pass the phone to his dad because I couldn't, it was like my child is hurt. I can't do anything. I don't know what it's like to not be a parent, and I don't know what it's like to not be able to help my child.
Right. You never practiced this before.
So I'm like, what do I do? So I gave the phone to his dad. He kind of got him calmed down. So going back to the CT scan, so I'm like, what do you mean in his neck?
Right.
So my son all the time he's saying that's impossible. That's impossible. Like also when he got shot, he put his hands up. Brian would have been dead
Yeah.
because the bullets that went into his wrist really would have went into
Kinda
his face. So he kind of
deflected
like
away.
blocked it, and then the bones in his wrist had, instead of having the bullets come through his wrist, it ricocheted to
Yep.
go out.
Yep.
So weird thing, I don't know if this is how this happened, but the way that he said he was positioned on the floor, because the active shooter drill at their school is that they get on the intercom, Miles Davis is in the building. Kids know that's the active shooter. They thought it was a drill, and then they actually heard gunshots outside the door. Guy comes in. Their teacher was standing up. Brian said his teacher was standing up. I know a lot of people were saying like she kind of threw herself in front of the kids to save them, but her being standing up, she was the first one to get shot. Her body dropped in front of them, which made it seem like she
Right.
threw herself in front of them.
Yeah.
Brian was farther away from her, which is how he got. I hate to say he got the worst out of those who survived, but he did.
Yeah.
So the way he was positioned, I think a bullet ricocheted maybe off the floor and jumped into his mouth. because if it would have went straight from the gun to him, it probably would have took
Too much
him
force.
out. They said that it was maybe inches away from a major artery.
Yeah.
So it went in right here, right
Kinda
below
like
his
right
ear,
underneath the ear.
and it hit the back of his jawbone. So it chipped the back of his jawbone. I think the jawbone caused it to stand up in his neck. So I saw the bullet for the first time back in January because he wants braces. So when I took him for the braces, I explained to the dentist, like what happened.
Yeah.
And so they showed me the x-ray. And so it's just literally standing up in his neck.
It's just there. Just hanging out
There's
there.
no intention on moving it. And again, with the faith that I have. And I always feel like with anything, God is always telling me something to help me to process or get past something. And the notion is as the tissues heal, it's going to form protection around the bullet to keep the bullet from moving. And so I'm just like, that doesn't give me any ease. My son has a bullet in his neck for
Right.
the rest of his life.
Right.
And God was like, well, how many times have you went places where you had no business being and I protected you?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay.
Yeah. That's part of it.
I was like, okay. But yeah, so it is, they said that the tissues will form protection around it,
Yeah.
keep it from moving. So far, he hasn't had any problems with it. He had most of his problems when it first happened. Whenever he would get ready to eat, his jaws would just click. He said it felt like when you wake up in the morning and you just go and try and eat something without stretching your mouth or, and your mouth is like popping. He
Yeah.
said it hurt it 10 times that.
Wow.
So that's the way he explained it. He doesn't have, that much pain with it now, or
That's
if
good.
any.
Yeah.
He's out of both brace, but he still has problems with strength. So he has to be careful about where he goes, or if he leave the house, he has to wear the right. He said he's bumped his hand, up against things, and it hurts really bad.
Oh yeah.
He has 50% strength back in his left hand, and maybe 20% in his right.
Okay.
So he can write, he can draw, he can't lift a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, that's a lot of healing that's got to happen in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
some
that's just the physical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But he is on the road to recovery.
He is
So-
definitely on the road to recovery. He's back in school. They went back after Martin Luther King Day. They had a electrical problem 2 weeks ago, which caused the fire drill to go off at the same class period that the shooting happened.
Man.
And he called me. He flipped out. And I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "I don't know if I'm okay." He couldn't identify his emotions in that moment.
Oh yeah. I'd imagine a little petrified.
Yeah, and so I reached out to one of his teachers who I know he feels safe with, and I said, "Hey, Brian's having a hard time with the fire drill."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Literally everybody is." She said, she said, "I froze." She was
Yeah.
like, "I didn't know what to do. I just froze." And she said, "I immediately started the evacuation plan for my kids."
Right.
So, but I would say he's doing really well. Brian is very internalized. He holds a lot of stuff in. But for him to take the initiative to FaceTime me during the fire drill, it lets me know that he knows the importance of him being connected to somebody that he feels safe with.
Yeah.
And he can identify is something wrong. He just doesn't know what.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the school, the active shooter, what did he tell you about it? Did he just say, "I looked up and saw him"? We were down on the floor, heard the shot shooting, or what's
So
he?
Brian kept his eye on the shooter the whole time. Brian is very vigilant. So he said that when he came in, he said he shot maybe 5 or 7 times, but again, he had there's no telling how many rounds came out
Oh,
of that.
echoes and
Yeah.
loud noises. Yeah.
And Brian has always had a sensitivity to his ear, so it could have been more, it could have been less.
Right.
But the amount of shots that like entered into him and other kids and also the teacher, I'm sure it probably was more.
Yeah.
But he kept his eye on him the whole time. The ironic thing is the shooter graduated with Jayla. So she knew him. She had been going to school with him ever since 6th or 7th grade.
That's
So
hard
she
too.
knew him. And so she said that when she found out who it was, she was actually shocked, but then not. She was like, he could have did it. Then nah. And then she said, oh, he definitely did it.
Yeah.
So she said that between 8th and 9th grade, I think she said he would just wear gloves all the time. But she was like, Mama, I just don't understand why he did it, because at VAP, like, you could literally be yourself. Like, you don't have to be a loner. She said there's literally a corner for the loners.
Right.
Like, the loners are the like, they
Right.
communicate with each other.
Right.
And so I know a lot of people, I don't know if you saw the post that I put up, because a lot of people was asking me, how do I feel about the shooter? And I don't feel any type of way. I do not hold anything against the kid. I don't have any anger or remorse against him. I think he needed help. I think the system failed him. I think the system failed his mom. She literally did everything that she could to try and prevent this from happening. She called the police to get the gun out of her house. They gave it back. She also had told them, I think like a year or so, that he was suicidal and he needed help. They did not help her. So I don't have any ill will towards her or him.
And did he go there specifically for that teacher? Was that the reason for that, or
I
just
did
he just went up there?
hear and confirm with a couple of people that he had a list.
Yeah.
And she was on his list.
Okay.
And yeah, she was on his list. A couple other teachers was on his list, but he also had another school on his list.
Really?
So his plan was to go in, do what he needed to do there, and then leave and go to another school as well.
Wow.
So was he already in a school when you were dropping your son off, or was he
No.
in? He came in afterwards,
Yes.
right? So the gates were supposedly closed at that time, or should have been.
So he came in through another door at the school, and they say that he like shot the glass out and went in. But the door that he went in, everybody knows that there's no security guards there. So he knew exactly. Again, he's a former student,
Yeah, he knew.
so he knew exactly which way to go. He knew how.
I'm sure they've corrected it now, right?
Yes. So now, they gave us a walkthrough. I actually did not walk past the door where he actually came in at, but I've driven past it since then. They have put up bulletproof doors and windows in the school now.
That's good.
I heard they were donated by someone. I'm not sure,
I'm sure.
but they now have the hospital doors. So they used to have I don't know if you've ever been into a old St. Louis public school, but they used to have just like these wooden doors with like a half glass.
Yeah, yeah.
Now they have the more steady door that has like maybe a quarter glass. So they have those in there now. But yeah, I heard he shot a glass out. He got into the school. I think the call was made at 9:11. Again, Brian called me at 9:17. He was already shot. So he literally knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
Right. And then your son, another question I've had a few people ask when they see your post, because I've obviously shared and told people to help when they can, was your son jumped out the window. Was the window already open, or did he like have to break it himself to get out?
No, so there was actually another kid, and I really wish somebody would give this kid like a hero badge or something, like some type of recognition. One of the kids who had actually gotten shot, he went and opened up the window, and the kids started jumping out, but he did not jump out the window. His father works at the school as well,
Okay.
so he went back out the door after the shooter so he can run and check on his dad.
Wow.
So yeah, it was his idea to raise up the window so that the kids
Incredible.
can jump out.
Get out of the harm. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, I mean, what you just explained to me is like one of the most horrifying things any parent could ever hear. And you didn't even hear it through like the news. That's how I found out about it. As soon as it kind of started, I have enough friends down there that they were like across the street filming across from, and they're like, there's an active shooter. People are just arriving. I mean, it was all that was going on. And it took me probably, because you didn't post for a while, but by the time you posted, I figured out that your son was there because I remembered the post where you had bragged about him going there. You'd
Which was the couple of weeks prior, right?
right. And now I kind of look back and I'm like, oh my, I wonder, and I'm like, oh man, she's got to be.
So I am adamant about social media. I'm always on there. But for whatever reason, this day I was not on social media, and I don't know if it was because I was FaceTiming with my daughter.
Right.
But I'm always like posting funny stuff, or or posting just some outrageous. But I was not on there that day. And then this happens. And by the time I got on social media, my inbox was already full. People was texting me, calling me, and they was like, "Hey, don't you got a kid to go to VAP?" And I said, this was before I made it to the hospital. And I got on social media. I said, my son was shot. I don't have any more details. That's all I know.
Right.
I'm like, I can't take like calls or anything. Like I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my
Right,
son.
right.
And so you have those people who I guess Audacity must have been on sale this year. So last year, like because it was like
It still might be.
I mean, so it's like people they literally started calling,
Yep.
texting. People were sending me messages, and I'm like, I can't.
You can't process that
can't
right now.
process,
That's
like,
why I
what's
didn't
going
reach out.
on.
I figured it.
Yeah, I just told you guys.
Like, I
Yeah,
literally just
yeah.
said, like, I don't have any more
Right.
details. And it's like you have people who feel like they are close enough to you
Yeah,
to
inner
where they can get
circle.
access. And I literally had to give my phone to my cousin. I said, here, like, I can't. I
Right.
can't do it.
Yeah,
Like, I can't deal with it. I can't process it. And so again, my daughter was at school, so I had to call her. I'm like, hey, Brian was shot. She had a whole anxiety attack.
Yeah.
Sure.
And within like 3 minutes, she was like, Mama, breathe. I'm like,
I mean, you telling me to breathe.
breathe.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and so she said, it's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. So I started thriving off of the faith of my other children because I called Chloe at school because I didn't want all the schools were on lockdown. I called her, talked to her principal, and I said, I need to. He said, you want me to tell? I said, no, I need to tell her.
Right. Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, hey, there was a school shooting. Brian was shot. And she was like, okay. I said, I'm gonna send somebody to pick you up from school. And she was like, okay.
Yeah.
She didn't cry till she got to the hospital to where it became a realization to her. My oldest son, I called him. I said, hey, Brian was shot at school. I'm on my way to the hospital. And he was like, dang, the dealership just took my car. And he was like, I'm going to be there as soon as they
Yeah.
get done.
Yeah.
And again, even with him, like they withheld so much strength to where I was like, okay, I got to get myself together. I have to clean this up. Brian's godmother, his godparents, period, or two of the most, they remind me of Josh.
Okay.
So, they've actually met. Evan and Josh has actually met. But I love them. There were things that I could not process or handle that his godmother, Stephanie, just immediately stepped up and started. So all media was contacting her. And so she was in Virginia. My daughter was in Virginia. And she was like, do you want me to fly back with Jay?
Right.
And so she had my daughter she Ubered my daughter from Norfolk, Virginia, I think to like Richmond or something. And I'm like, Steph, like, are you
Yeah.
like nuts? Like, she was
Yeah.
like, no, we need to fly home together because I need to make sure she's okay. And
Right.
in turn, she can make sure I'm okay. They're very active with my children. My children spend summers with them.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, her husband actually texted her and said, do not get on social media. Call me first. And so that's how he broke the news to her. So they flew back that day. The next day, they were there. They were supportive. She's the one who actually started the GoFundMe. And even with that, like, I did not, about the hate that's in the world, but you don't really know about the hate in the world until you have to actually experience it yourself. And like people literally came at me because of the people who was given to my son. I'm not a person where I ask for anything. I don't. My friends literally said, if you do not let us help you, we're just going to just start buying stuff and we're going to just start helping you
Right.
without
Regardless if
you
you
telling
want
us
it.
or if you want it or not. Because to them, they say that I do a lot for the community and it's time for the community to start helping me. But I'm like, y'all, I'm like, nah, I'm like, I don't think I want to do it. And so finally did the GoFundMe, and then the small things I was asking people for handheld games like Rubik's cubes to Brian nerves were gone.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't have any feeling in
Sure.
anything.
Start getting
So
it
I'm
back.
like handheld games. People literally, literally thought I was asking for like PS4s and
Yeah.
PS5s, and I'm like, what? I was like, no. I'm like, he needs things that's going to challenge the muscles in his hands and his nerves, you know. And then I was like, pillows, like you saw the pictures of him like wrapped up in like he had two casts. He was
Yeah, I
just
put up a couple pictures while you were talking so
like
people could see.
so it literally was like he could not. He had to sleep elevated, and so I was
You don't want to roll, roll
like
on
he
it.
didn't want him to like anything. So I was like pillows, and he couldn't wear jeans because he couldn't fasten them up. So I was
Right.
like jogging pants or hoodies or t-shirts and things like that.
Reasonable things to ask
Reasonable,
for.
simple things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I also asked for. I was really petitioning my friends for meals because I'm like, with everything going on, I'm a cook. I cook
Yeah,
every day. I'm like, with everything that goes on, like I'm not gonna have time to cook.
Yeah, a little meal
Brian was
train.
having doctor's appointments like every day, every other day. Physical therapy, bone doctors, ENT doctors,
Yeah.
and all of this stuff. So I'm like, I didn't have time to cook, and so people was like, if she need food in her house, she just need to say that. She out here asking people for food, and I'm like,
Wow.
I
So
was like,
like,
what?
yeah, my
It got
wife
so bad.
Yeah.
It got bad.
My
So
wife loves to plan meals for people in our church who have, or even in the community who have stuff like that. Just because I think only a mom understands. We got 6 kids, so she's constantly going to doctor appointments. We had a son have a chipped tooth. He's getting a cap. They had to put a permanent cap or a temporary cap on. 2 days later, temporary cap's off. Because he's a boy, and that takes a lot of
I don't think
time.
people know it. I was so, again, I'm always on social media. Maybe this was a time where I should have taken a social media break. I was so emotionally drained. A, from what happened to my son, but B, because of all of the negative things that was being said about me. And I'm like, my son didn't get shot because he was out here robbing a bank or, messing with somebody's stuff or, all the things that he could be doing.
Right.
Like my son got shot because he literally was doing what he was supposed to do, and that's go to school.
Right.
And so I was so drained with that social media stuff, I couldn't even focus on what my son needed from me in that
One-on-one,
moment
yeah.
because, and again, this was the day he got out the hospital. Maybe it was the next day he got out the hospital, like that Wednesday, because they let him out that Tuesday. Yeah, so that Wednesday, and our dog barks, and Brian flips out because Brian was sitting there quiet. We was all watching TV. Dog barks. He starts crying, and I said, "Wait, what's wrong?" And he started yelling at the dog like, "Shut up,
Yeah.
shut up!" And I'm like, but our dog somebody was coming up to the door. So I'm like, Bruno's just doing what he normally does. Like, what's wrong? And so his dad asked him. He said, "What were you thinking about?" He was replaying the shooting in his head.
Sure.
So at the time when the gunfire starts going off in his head, the dog was barking. So it triggered a PTSD. So I'm like, this is what I have to look forward to.
Yeah.
So my dad goes and buys him like these headphones that he can walk around the house with. I'm trying to keep Bruno out of his, area for a while until he gets adjusted to like all these different, his new normal. Like his whole life has changed at this point. And so I'm trying to keep him in a space to where he feels comfortable enough to where we don't have to give this dog away. Because truth be told, I love my son more than I love my dog. I'm sorry.
No, I think it should be that way.
so,
I love dogs, but you're absolutely right. I mean, your family's
know,
first.
If it's going to be a problem for him, then we may have to, get rid of him. But it did not come down to that. We still have Bruno.
Bruno's saved.
Bruno's
Bruno
safe
is
for now.
safe.
He's still part of the
is.
fam.
And so it was an adjustment, but it is an adjustment. Like we don't know what 4th of July looks like for him. We don't. I didn't know what New Year's Day or New Year's Eve was gonna look like for him. Again, we didn't know what the fire drill was gonna look like for him. It's just everyday things because the school can't just never have another drill. So
Right.
it's like, how do you get adjusted to these things? I just changed his therapist, and I found out that so the school created a peace room, and to me I'm like, oh my god, that's so dope. Like, you having a moment, you can go in the peace room. You
Right.
can, they had like bean bags, the lights were dim, I'm like, this is really dope.
Seems
Seems reasonable to
yeah.
me, right? And Brian was like, I would never go in there. I'm like, why? And I put two and two together. They put the peace room across from the room where he got shot.
Mm.
So
Just looking out over it.
so
Yeah.
he avoids that area at
Yeah,
all
yeah.
costs. So you have that. And then I also found out that he only feels safe with two teachers in the building. And he told us that he walks into every class now looking for a way of escape.
Yeah.
So he's planting his escape, and he said there's one class that's on the third floor where if something happened, he literally don't know like how he would get out, but every other class, like, he has a plan of escape. And that's a scary way to
Navigate
live
life.
and
Yeah.
navigate life.
Yeah.
Like, you always have to have a way of escape when you have entered into a
Yeah.
situation.
Especially at that age. I mean, like you want a kid just to be a kid, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The last thing you want them thinking about is all that kind of stuff. You want them to go to school, hang out with friends, learn, enjoy life.
Well, it sounds like you guys got a good routine going though. At least, I mean, trying to figure out.
Yeah, the road to recovery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a long road to recovery, but he is doing good, and
Yeah.
he seems like, from what you've been sharing, that he just each day is a little bit of growth, and one more step towards hopefully being normal. So whatever the new normal is. So
Yeah, yeah, I'm proud of it. That's my Grace kid.
Lean in. I mean, you have faith. Lean into
Yeah.
that. Protect. God is our protector.
Yeah.
God protected
That
you
is
that
my
day.
Grace
He's
kid.
not gonna. He's not gonna stop protecting you just because it's a new day.
yeah,
So that would
absolutely.
be my
And-
only encouragement. I've never gone through that, but I do know that it is comforting to know that our God walks beside us. So
yes, he does. Yeah, lean into the faith, and I think it sounds like you've got a good community around you with godparents and people. When I think about that, I think of when you got a community helping you, it helps you process and walk through those times. That's what we're all there for,
Yeah,
right?
we have a
So,
really strong support system. We even had like one of the deacons at our church. He was military. He dealt with PTSD, and he bought Brian a PTSD workbook. Obviously, I have to get it approved by like the therapist to make sure
Right.
that it will be effective for Brian.
right.
But again, like the community really backed me. I even noticed, so like, even with the negative things that were coming up against me, it was so many people who were for me that like they start handling, the negative things, and it
Yeah.
was just like, hey, don't worry about this, we got this.
Haters gonna hate.
Yeah, it was like we're not.
yeah,
Seriously.
One of the guys that I went to school, he actually went to Central as well, and he became a runner for me. So it's people who was contacting him like, hey, we have this stuff for her, can you pick it up? And he would just take his day and just run around to get things for me
great.
and get things for Brian, picking things up, dropping it off at the house. So my community really came in and helped me out a lot.
That's awesome.
Helped me out a lot.
That's awesome.
that's really really good. And so, how's the rest of the family adjusting? Obviously, he's working on adjusting. How are the other kids around the house knowing that that's happening? Are they responding to any of that as well?
So again, I made sure that, because I think a lot of times people look at it like this happened to Brian. Yes, it physically happened to Brian, mentally happened to Brian, but it also mentally happened to everybody who's connected to Brian and to the house.
Exactly.
Again, I'm big on therapy, so I made sure that all the kids had a therapy session lined up. So they all have talked to a therapist. I think Jayla is one of the ones. Well, she had some things going on before therapy, but she's the one who's consistent with making sure that she goes to therapy and just kind of navigating life. Period. But Brian, he's doing really well with everything. Chloe, she did really good in her therapy session, and Rob was also going to therapy before this. So again, I had to make sure that they got that.
Right, right. And when you
That's
said that, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is I mean, anytime if something happens to one of my kids, it's the family unit, right? I mean, and so it happens to all of us. We're all part of that journey, and that we're all part of that, uh, whatever it is, that episode. Like you can talk to my son who chipped his tooth, and his younger brother who accidentally did it is, just as traumatized almost, if not maybe more than the one who had it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I just think of when those things happen, that's how the family kind of, it happens to all of us, right?
Yeah.
And so, working through those emotions, those feelings, because if I knew one of my, let's say if one of my siblings got shot, every time I go to school, I'd be looking for an exit too. I'd be like, well, I don't want that to happen to me. It happened to my, my brother or my sister, like, so.
And I want people to know it's okay. It's okay to love therapy and love Jesus. You don't find therapy too common in Black households. We were told to go to church, give your problems, lay it down at the altar. Is what they told us.
No,
Yeah,
no. I mean, it's good to
but
do that.
it is okay. God has given therapists a special ability in order to help you to cope in areas of your life and to also love Him at the same time. I don't think that He would have given therapists the knowledge to help us navigate through different things if He was just going to handle it. I'm not saying that God cannot handle it, but what I'm saying is get some help if you need it.
Yeah.
Well, get. I think to your point. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know this about the Black community that it is kind of maybe shunned a little bit, kind of like looked down upon.
If you if if my grandmother was living, she would tell me to go to church and let God handle it.
Yeah.
Because if you went to a therapist, you were deemed as crazy.
Okay.
Really?
Yes. Like
Well,
yeah.
the way that I can not rationalize but think about it is that you're like you have a human problem. It's not necessarily a spiritual problem. You got a human problem. You're dealing with human emotions of fear, these things that come along with human. Have a trained human that can declutter that for you.
And
You
I
know?
don't think that they know how to separate the two.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know how to separate their humanistic side from their spirituality
Right.
side,
Okay.
which is why a lot of us suffer in sin because we don't know how to separate the two.
Right.
And so in saying it, it's like if you go to therapy, you're crazy. You need to give it to God, give it to Jesus, take it to the altar, pray about it. It's like the most common thing that you would hear in the Black community. You need to pray about it. But what I love about our generation and the generation behind us is that they are very adamant about therapy. Letting everybody, it's okay to get therapy, it's okay to go. But then you have like my dad's generation and before him where they're just like, I ain't talking to nobody but God. I ain't talking to nobody but Jesus, But there's just some things that I've learned through my therapist that I never would have learned in the church.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there are people gifted in the church that have the gift of therapy, right? I mean, I know several Christian therapists and counselors, and they do a fabulous job that, quite honestly, pastors aren't prepared to handle or walk through. I mean, I think part of the problem is we think our pastors are supermen. They're built to handle any and every situation, right? They can leap tall bound, buildings in a single bound, and we put these pastors up, and we forget that they're human. They're not experts at everything. They're hopefully an expert at God's word, but just because you're an expert at God's word, I mean, that's kind of like. You can have somebody who can be an engineer and plan a car, but if you talk to people who actually work on cars, they'll tell you engineers, especially like the car factories and stuff, they'll tell you engineers design them, and then we find out that they kill people, and so we have to fix them, right? I mean, some things are great in theory, but in practice, there's something still missing. And I think in counselors, you have to take those two sides and kind of work through that. The practical side of living every day sometimes with something that maybe happened, or maybe that's something that's feels missing. I mean, sometimes it isn't always that we have trauma in our life, but sometimes working through loneliness or the feelings of loneliness.
Yeah.
There's different things that I think there's nothing wrong. And some people find that in the church, whether it be a men's group or a women's group, but other people need counseling, and there's nothing wrong with that. They need to get to a deeper level of it, need maybe additional accountability in it. I mean, sometimes even in a good church, let's say if you got an active men's group or a women's group, maybe you're only meeting once a week. Well, you might need somebody checking in on you every day if you've got a serious addiction problem. Like once a week. That's 7 days is a long time to go by without not doing whatever that addiction is, right? So having that extra accountability, having that somebody who's there to help you. There's nothing. I think it's really good that people consider therapists or counselors. Just like anything else, just do your homework on who they are and know who you're stepping into. But other than that, absolutely, I think.
Well, therapy is really, it's bringing what is true about what happened out into the open. So I think when I think of therapy, it is like a truth session. You're getting the truth, your true emotions, what you should have felt versus what you did feel, or these. So therapists are trained at getting to the truth. I mean, if that helps
No, that's
at all
good.
to
I
think
think
of
that's
it
good
that way,
insight.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's great insight. They're trained to get to the truth, and I also would say they also are trained to help you walk through the truth. Because you can get to the truth and now still not walk through it, right? The
What now?
emotions and all
Yeah,
that.
what now? What do I
Yeah.
do now?
And they're typically really good at helping you walk through that. And that's very, very important for people to understand. And I think when you start to understand those things about your own life, it helps you to be more compassionate and better about other people too. Because you start to realize, I don't know what they're walking through or what they're going through. Now that I've had to deal with my own stuff, you start to understand everybody's got stuff. And we need to maybe, in versus being so quick to judge or make quick snaps on social media, maybe we need to give people a little bit more grace. Yeah, I think especially I look in the political climate that we got going on right now. A lot of times it's, and I think sometimes we just need to insert a lot of grace and understand maybe there's some reasons why they believe what they believe. And then maybe there's reasons you got what you are, and it doesn't make them bad people. Just to have those belief systems that are maybe contrary to yours, maybe taking a step further and saying, I'm going to meet with that person and get to know them, find out who they are. I always tell people at the gym, we get going, and every now and then somebody will start with politics. I'll be like, hey, let's hold off. I just want to get to know you. I'll get to your politics eventually, but let's just get to know you as a person because, if we start out with that, that's so disruptive in life. And I think getting to know people who are just people, God wanted to know the heart of people and share the heart of people before he ever did anything else. So
That was one of the things that I said with the administration at the school when the shooting happened, and we had like a parent meeting about like how the kids will go back to school and things like that, and some of the other parents were kind of clawing at the administrative staff, and everybody who was shot, in a sense, they were all in the sophomore class. Even the young lady who lost her life, she was also a sophomore. And so you have like seniors who were worried about prom and graduate. And I get it, like this the biggest year of your life. And so it was a lot of clawing and finger pointing, and I stood up and I was like, can we just give the administration some grace? They've never been through this before. We've never been through this before. And let's be honest, our city has never been through this before. This wasn't just a my son is shot, although it was very personal for me. It was also personal to those administrators who lost a coworker, that mom who lost a daughter, those other parents who kids were hurt, those other kids who were in that class that grace was extended to where they didn't get shot at
Right.
all. And it's like some of those teachers were shot at. And it's like, where's the grace?
Right.
Like, just give them time. They're trying to process.
They didn't want that to
They
happen.
they didn't want, right. Nobody willingly just let the kid in,
Right.
like don't they were like clawing at them, and like my heart was just pouring because I'm just like, the principal, she was like standing there, but you can tell like she was just kind of like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Every spotlight was on her. Everybody was trying to figure out like what went wrong. Yes, there were some things that went wrong.
Yeah.
There were some things that could have been prevented. I was resting on this earlier this week, and I was a senior in high school when Columbine happened, and I remember going back to school the next day after it happened. And again, VAP is one of those free spirited schools. So we would have, the gothic kids to come in. They had like these black trench coats, and we all like
Uh-oh, yeah.
looking, you never paid attention to it before, but it's
Right.
like now it's like, dude, like you gotta take this coat off. We don't trust you.
That's how
So-
a stereotype happens right away.
Right.
Right.
So because it happened in Columbine, we was up in arms. And so for me, when I was resting on it the other day, I said, now this happened back in 99. SOPS and schools across the country has had enough time to redo all of these schools to make them safer for our kids. We could have been had bulletproof
Right.
doors and windows. We could have, been had high security measures. We could have been had a lot of this stuff. We had since 99 to prepare for this. From 99 up until now, I don't know how many school shootings we have had, but it seemed like it wasn't, how can I put this? It seems like it's normal now.
And it shouldn't be.
And it should not be like a school shooting should not be normal. 1 week after Brian was shot,
Right.
they had the shooting at University of Virginia, which that's where his godmother was working. And so it's like a week after that, it was another one. And then a week after that, it was another one. And it's like, dude, like, what can we do? Where are we missing the mark?
Right.
We've had years to prepare for this. But it's like nobody wanted to really grace them. And I felt bad for them.
I think more people feel you too when they say we've had more time to prepare. I think that there's a lot of people, and myself included, that keep going. I mean, if we can write billions of dollars to Ukraine or other places, not to bring that kind of stuff in there, but it seems like spending $1 billion or whatever it would take to put better safety measures. I mean, at every school across this country, not just in St. Louis, but across this country, it just seems like that would be really something
Yeah.
practical, something good to do. That because no parent ever wants to get that call that you got. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that would rip me apart, and I would struggle bringing my kid back to the school.
Yeah, there are some kids who are still doing the virtual option right now. They don't feel safe going back to school. But this is the society we live in, right? So October 24th, you have this happen. October 25th, Kanye loses $1 billion with Adidas.
Yeah.
And it's like nobody's talking about these
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
who gotten shot anymore.
Right.
So it's like this is the world we live in. Like the world cares more about a billionaire losing $1 billion than they do about some kids
Losing their
and
lives,
losing
yeah,
their
yeah.
lives. And it's like, for me, being a black mom, it was like, did it disappear because these were urban kids in an urban area? Like, Uvalde was all over everywhere. You heard about it everywhere, but it's like you don't hear about people talking about the young lady losing her life. What about her? What about her mom? Has anybody reached out to the teacher's family? Has anybody checked on them just to see like how they're doing? Where are they with things? Has anybody reached out to the assistant principal who was shot at?
Yeah.
Is he okay? Because for them, that's their job.
Right.
So he got to get up every day and go back into a building where he almost lost his life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of validity to what you said. Yeah. How
Absolutely.
it kind of got brushed over for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it
well, you
continues
see that with
to.
you
I was
see that
going
with anything. If anything, if it doesn't fit that particular network's agenda or whatever they're doing that day, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care how important it is or how, they're going to put what they want on. to
Well, and I think the world's that way a little bit too. It's big. It's better to. I think part of it too is we don't have to emotionalize it when we talk about a Kanye versus because that's not you don't have to deal with the emotions of that versus dealing with the emotions of kids. And when we think, well, that's in St. Louis, I'm in L.A. or I'm wherever, so they don't that's not me. But the truth is that could be you because as you just said, this is an upcoming.
Yeah.
We continue to see these more and
Yes.
more and more. When I was growing up, we all had guns in the back of our trucks, and we would show up at school, and nobody shot at anybody. That was unheard of. Today, different story, different time, and I really agree with what you said. I really have been strongly advocating for, and that kind of goes back to when I was telling you, my wife asked, you kind of answered them, and I asked them along the way, but that was one of her things is how secure was the school and what kind of measures they were taking, because we think about that all the time. We got 6 kids, and we're,
Yeah,
the,
so I dropped Brian off yesterday. I dropped him off at school, and they had like security guards and things like outside the building, which was very comforting because I'm like, oh, okay, this is nice to see that they have
Right.
they had like a control car, cop
yeah.
car, outside the school. So I was very comfortable with that. But again, like yeah, like you said, it's like so many different things like go on, and it's like they don't the attention that should be there is not there. Yes, we need to change like gun laws, and I think people are thinking, "Oh no, they just want to take my gun away." No, we don't, but we do want to stop kids like the kid who had it from getting them.
Right,
No,
yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, we need to. I had this conversation with the dad last night, and we were after youth group. I help out middle school boys at my church, and we were talking. And we're both big gun advocates. I'm a big 2A guy, but we're sitting there talking, and we both acknowledge right away that this mental health thing. We need to have better things in there. And then one of the comments I've made, and I've always thought this, I don't think passing a lot of gun advocates will say, well, we need to have, if your dad passes a gun on to you, we want to be careful how that all happens. And I agree on that, but I think the simple solution is just treat it almost like a car. The truth is the minute you put your key in that car, you better be licensed, right? You have to have a minimum proficiency of understanding car and car law. We should do that with guns. Your dad can pass you down a gun, but before you can touch it and load it, you better have a proficiency. And I think that maybe having, you kind of see this already, maybe having permits or something like that where younger kids can be with it when they're with an adult, just like we do permit drivers. I think there's something there that we could kind of find a way that would better protect society. If you ever go to a gun range, one of the first things you realize is the people who don't know anything about guns, because they'll start.
it's too many loopholes.
Yeah.
Too many like this kid in particular. He did try and buy from an authorized dealer, and his background was flagged. So he went to a private dealer. But it's like it's too many loopholes in it. So when his mom calls the police and say, "Hey, I want this out of my house," they turned it over to somebody else, but that person gave it back to him. So
Right,
again, it's like, how do we get around those things? Like,
Absolutely.
and me personally, if I'm calling the police like, "Hey, get this out of my house," and I hopefully, prayerfully hope that the police will take it and not just pass it on to somebody
right,
else.
right.
Because
Right.
I'm letting you know at this point it's something wrong with my kid that I don't trust him with this gun,
Right.
and especially in my house.
Yeah.
So it was like she was verbally but non-verbally telling them, "Hey, get this."
Right.
Like
Yeah,
he's
that's a
going to
big
do
loophole.
something.
Yeah.
Like she knew he was going to do something
Right,
bad with
right.
it. She knew it. She probably didn't know it was going to be a school shooting, but she knew he was going to do something.
Right.
And so again, all of these loopholes. So when I say change gun laws, and I'm not saying that the police need to go into every single household and take the guns out. No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there's no reason that a 19 or 20-year-old should have this gun. And he's not a hunter. He's not, you know,
Well,
he's not like none of the, he doesn't need it.
Right.
Like he doesn't need it.
Well, and I think you identified the real question was, even beyond the need, was his mom reported him, and that should have been look, the kid had mental health issues. We now, we know that there should have been some checks and balances. I think that we need to be doing better. And as you said, he was denied trying to buy from a legal store, and we need to close these loopholes of the illegal ways or other ways of getting them. I go back and say, and I think there's something there. If we could find some way to do it like we do cars, I mean, it doesn't mean you can't get a hot car, but I mean, it's very tough. I mean, it's not the normal way. Most people got to have a driver's license. Most people have to show a proficiency of driving a car.
Yeah.
I think starting to treat it somewhere in there. I don't know that I don't have the exact answer, but I think somewhere along that line would start to help resolve things. If you got mental health issues, or even if you have like a heart attack, you can't drive a car, right? You have a period where until you can prove that your health is past a point of endangering other people on the road. And so
I didn't know that.
yeah,
I didn't. Did you know that?
That you couldn't drive if you had a heart attack?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I don't know, but I know some people who
yes, 100%. If you have a heart attack and have a cardiac arrest,
Yeah.
you cannot drive. I want to say for either 90 days or 6
I
months.
didn't know that.
oh, wow.
You have to get rides. You cannot. Yeah, if there are certain measures, and this is the law that your license is what's quote unquote called suspended
Yeah.
for medical reasons. I mean, that seems, again, very reasonable, right? I mean, if somebody had a heart attack, you don't want them having a heart attack. I mean, the chances of somebody having another heart attack shortly after are higher. So they want to wait till that period's passed before they put them behind a car going 80 miles an hour. I mean, it seems reasonable. Just like when we kind of get tougher when people are older with
Yeah.
cars, right? They have to take their licenses a little more often. They check the eyesight a little more often. Seems like we could.
The problem is the biggest problem is that I will follow whatever law gets passed because I'm a law-abiding citizen. So if you pass a law where I have to do this, I have to fill out this form, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I might be annoyed. I'll be really annoyed. But people that don't follow law, that kid, no matter what, it seems like he made up his mind. He made a list. This was something he was going to do. So the problem is, how do you prevent that kid from finding a gun at all costs?
The problem with this kid in particular is that the behavioral health issue was ignored.
Right.
When his mother called a year before, I think, and said that he was suicidal,
Yeah,
it was ignored.
yeah.
And
So that sounds like it's the
so
solution. How do you prevent it?
that was
Yeah.
the solution
Yeah.
to that problem. He had behavioral health problems.
Okay.
He had a mental illness
Yeah.
that went unaddressed. And I do know this for a fact because it happened to one of my siblings. One of my siblings had an episode, and we called the behavioral health unit to come and evaluate him. My brother needed a hospital. So they send the police out with the behavioral health unit.
Right.
Before she could get to the evaluation, they were running my brother's name and they locked him up for a wanted
Right.
versus sending him to the hospital.
Yeah.
So now he went to jail and he got out within like 24 hours. But guess what? The whole
What-
behavioral health thing is gone now,
Right,
right? So
right.
it's like
Man.
the police would rather lock us up versus get us help. I
Right.
would have rather them, even if they had to run his name, and it wasn't a warrant, it was a wanted for questioning.
Right.
And so it was like I would rather them took him to the hospital, gave him the evaluation, got him the mental help that he needed, and then if you needed to lock him up after that, fine. But at least we know that he got the mental help.
Right.
that
Let's
he
first
needed in
things
the
first.
process.
That's what the call was for, right?
The call was for mental help.
Right.
And they took him to jail because he was wanted.
Which is going to deter people in the future from calling.
Because why? I don't want my brother to go to jail.
Right. Why would
it's
I call
why
for
would I
help?
call for help again?
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably what that mother was feeling. Well, I've called them to help him before, and they didn't help him. So I don't know what to do at this point. She was also equally exhausted, and so that's why I said, like, I know that there have been like some social media posts of people like clawing her out, like she didn't raise her child right, and we can only do so much as parents. We don't really know what route our kids are going to go when they get to a certain age.
Right.
Like, yes, I think I am the best parent in the world, but I don't know what Rob, Chloe, Jayla, or Brian may do, once they move out of my house.
Yeah.
Like, we just don't know. And so in saying that, it's like she was exhausted out of resources. She couldn't call the police. She couldn't call the mental ward. Everybody told her, no, we can't do this. And so it's like, what do you do for her? Like, how do you help her? And then you have this situation where her kid has literally lost it completely to where he's exhausted to the point where he wants other people to feel the pain that he felt. And unfortunately, my family has felt the pain that this kid has been holding in. And so his outlet was to hurt the people who he felt had hurt him, because we don't teach our kids to talk to us. We always teach them in a sense that the adult is always right. We don't take the time to really listen to our kids. We don't really take their opinions into consideration. It's like, you're the child, I'm the adult, what I say go. And so there's no telling how he was trying to fix his problem. Maybe he went to this teacher and maybe tried to have a conversation with her. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe he went to the principal or somebody and maybe they just blew him off.
Right.
Maybe not. We don't know, right? But when we don't have conversations with our kids and we don't get in your kids' business, get in their business. Because when we don't get in their business, we have things like this happening.
Right. Right. And on top of that, they might go somewhere else for that advice, and it might be
It
not be
may
good
not
advice.
be a school shooting.
Yeah.
It may be a heroin overdose, or what's the popular thing now? Fentanyl. Like we don't know. Like it could be so many different things. We don't know where our kids are mentally because we don't get in their business enough.
Yeah.
Well, I think even each other. I think that we need to, again, we're in a society where there's not a lot of grace, and we try to judge people before getting to know them a lot. And I think taking a step back, I mean, I know people who, I mean, I think of all the different crazy stuff, but I mean, a mom who takes her kids down and shoots all three of them because she's going through PST,
PTSD.
yeah. I mean, just something like that where you go, I mean, that's crazy. But on the other hand, I'm sure there were signs and things had to be reached out. And, if people would just give each other grace, give each other a listening ear. And when they hear something, don't just say, okay, well, they're going through it. Or I love the pet answer of, I'll pray for that, but pray now. Right. One of the things we've talked about is right now is the time to pray for them. Number two is give them your number or whatever and say, hey, I'm willing to walk through that with you. Sounds like you got a lot of load on your plate. What can we do to help you? What, you know what? We know somebody who has a talent in that area. Let me get you in touch with them. You need meals. We know people who can help organize that. Let's get that person on the horn and organize some meals. Let's take that load off of each other. I think part of it too is I look at our society. When I was growing up, nobody had garage door openers, so you got to know your neighbors and talk a lot because you'd always have to get out of your car, open up your garage door. People kind of get home at the same time. You get to know people. Seems like today everything's so automatic, so it's so easy just to go home, hit the garage door opener, door opens, you pull in, close it. You don't know people a whole lot,
been in
and
my
we're a
house
lot more
3 years. I do
disconnected.
not know my
Distractions.
neighbors.
Distractions.
What's that?
I've been in my house 3 years and I do not know my neighbors. I feel so bad for that because my neighbor on my left side, he cuts my grass every time he cuts his grass, and I don't even know this man's name. I just be like, thanks. You want a plate? You want a pie?
Thank you.
But we just need to, I think, give as a community, we can give each other more grace, get to know each other a little bit more, slow down a little bit. Life goes by way too quick. I try to tell my kids all the time, don't be afraid to slow down. You don't have to conquer the world at 13 or 14 or 18. That doesn't mean put your ambitions out of the way. I'm just saying make sure that in the pursuit of them, that you take a breath every now and then, that you take some pause time, that you get outdoors a little bit, get away from those computers and all, take a walk.
You got to be willing to. So I'm in the process of writing a book, and I identify myself as a mud treader. You got to be willing to get in the mud with people. Life gets heavy, and I'm only speaking from experience. I was writing my book, and my book coach, she was like, well, where's the next chapter gonna start? And I said, I don't think I want chapters. There was never a pause in my trauma. So I'm just going to write until I feel like I can take a breath and then I'll start the next chapter. But you have
I like that
people
idea.
who are out there who are struggling and they don't have community. They don't have people that they can talk to. I have every outlet of community I could ever imagine, but there are just some days where I feel like I'm overloading my friends or I'm overloading my family, and I don't want to pour all this on them because I don't want to feel like I'm burdening them. And so I'll hold it in until I can't anymore. But you don't have people who have those people to where they can unload on you.
Right.
And so if you're not going to get in the thick with people, don't offer yourself up to be
That's
available
true.
to them, because people really are out here, and we say, storms come, but no, like it's dirty. It's dirty, like it's thick. And some things I know people who have lost their moms and they're just like, how did you do it? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm like, you just can't tell them that you don't know. You have to literally give them the physical steps that you took to get to where you are. And so I'm like, I went to therapy. On top of going to therapy, I had a support system. When there were days when I needed wine nights, my friends, they would come out because birthdays are hard for me. anniversaries are hard for me. My mother died 2 weeks before Christmas, a day before Chloe's birthday. And so it's like I couldn't celebrate Chloe because I knew that the next day was going to be the day that I lost my mother. And so it's like, if you really not going to get in the thick with people, be careful about offering up your service. Or
That's
be
true.
careful about offering up yourself. And so I'm in a season now where I'm learning to help people without carrying their burden, because I have a habit in carrying other people's emotions. So it's like, now I can't help you because
You're overwhelmed.
I'm
Yeah.
overwhelmed, you know. So I'm in a space of where I'm learning that, where I have been literally asking God, like, hey, help me to help them without carrying their stuff.
That's a
To be
good.
able to listen and let go and
Or
not
be able to
necessarily carry.
lessen it.
Yes.
I think, I mean, you're not a robot. You're going to feel something, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not making it the everything.
Yeah, like I told my therapist, I said, I don't know how you do this, because I feel like you need a therapist because you talk to me. I feel like my stuff is too heavy for you.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can handle it. I can handle it. And again, a lot of times, even with us, we try and put ourselves in a position of a therapist to try and help somebody, and we don't have that capability. And I think once we really learn our roles and learn who we are and learn our capacity, then we could really effectively start to help people. But we have to be willing. And I think that's where we as believers have fallen short, is that once we get our lives together, we don't want to go back and help anybody else. And that's not what Jesus called us to do. And God clearly said in Revelations that we are supposed to be the word of our testimony. We are supposed to be the ones to vocalize how God has brought us through something. But the old church would say, oh, God did it. Well, how did he do it? Like, I know y'all didn't go to therapists, but how did he do it? Like, was you had your electricity turned off? Was it an agency that you went through, or was it a friend that helped you? Like, how? There was never a how.
Right.
And so our generation had to figure out the how. But now we want to be secretive and stingy with the how. We can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
We can't afford to do that, because there is a girl in high school right now who has a baby who don't know if she's going to graduate, if she's going to be able to. She probably don't have a babysitter. She probably
Right.
her world is probably flipped. She probably don't even want the baby.
Right.
And then we start finding babies in dumpsters
Yeah.
because she didn't have help, or she didn't have an outlet.
Right. Yeah.
Well, your shirt says it well. I was thinking about that. I was like, building
Oh,
one
yeah,
woman,
we
one
build
girl at a
every
time.
woman
Like
one
it.
Yeah.
girl at a time.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's I always tell people that's how you do it, right? I try to disciple one or two men at a time, and just help them get to where then they can disciple somebody, and then
Yeah,
they can
and
disciple somebody.
And I said healing every woman, one girl at a time, because it's the little girl in every woman that we have to heal. And until you're ready to really grow up and face those things that has traumatized you as a little girl, you'll never be an effective woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that. Sin grows in the dark.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So.
Expose with the light,
Yeah.
bring it out. Well, is there any
Did we miss
plans for?
anything?
I was,
Did you ask all your wife questions? Or
Oh yeah. But I want to know, where do we go from here, VonDina? What's the next few your son, your family? Is there any plan for how that's looking like for right now? Do they have they? Are you guys thinking about that? Is he thinking about even college at this point with all that's going on, or is it just trying to get up and make it through tomorrow?
Brian is very lax on his goals and what he wants to do. He's in that, but this was before the shooting. Like, I'm not
He
gonna
shouldn't
blame-
know what he wants to do.
Yeah, like he's a
too
sophomore
young,
in high school, so he hasn't really come to terms with like what he wants to do. I could see Brian being the entrepreneurial kid again. Like, I would go to the grocery store and buy snacks. Brian is the one that piles his book bag up and sell my free stuff to his friends.
Yeah.
So he's always looking for a way to make money.
He's a capitalist.
Yes, yeah, off my.
Yeah. Picking up on
So I can see Brian very well going into business or finance or entrepreneurship. Like I said, he's just recently gotten really, really into, like, he was like, Mom, Cash App, they'll start letting me buy stock at 13 now. And I said, Brian,
That's awesome.
Let him do it.
he can't. So I told him he can do it through my brokerage account, but he cannot do it on his
Oh
own.
yeah, no.
Because,
Yeah,
with
need to
FINRA,
control that,
I
yeah.
was like,
you control that.
legally
Yeah.
he can't because I work at Wells Fargo. So
That's right.
anything that he does, it would have to come, through my job.
Right.
And so I can see him very well getting off into that. Robert is looking into relocating. He's been looking at Atlanta, and I think he was looking at like Chicago. He just wants to take the risk. He wants an EGOT. So and he wants to be on Broadway, and
Yeah.
St. Louis is not going to get him there. So
Yeah, he's kind of accomplished everything here, so he's got to move up to get noticed and be able to take those next steps. That
Exciting.
makes sense.
Scary, exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jayla is now looking into internships. Like I said, she wants to go into the directing and the film role of things. So I think she has been looking into maybe internships with like Tyler Perry,
Oh, cool.
things like that. And Chloe is just Chloe. She's
Just doing Chloe
Chloe's
things.
just running the
How
house.
about all
at this
that?
point.
All
So,
from a little girl from
Blumeyer.
the Blumeyer, housing project. Yeah,
You got.
that's awesome. Go God.
I always think about people's lives in like a book. Like your life is a book to God. Like page 1, you're born. Last page, you die. Beautiful in His sight. So I just, from what I know about you so far, and you're not even halfway through life, like I can't imagine how many pages you're filling up for God right now.
Well,
That's
VonDina,
cool.
thank you so much for joining us today, for the conversation. It was awesome. It's so great to catch up with you, to hear all God's doing in and through you.
God is doing His thing.
Yes, He is. He is. I'm
Got no choice but to.
I'm very proud of you. I mean, I look back and remember you, and I'm so proud of you. And I know Josh is. We stay in touch and talk, and I can't wait for him to hear this broadcast, for him to check it out, because I know he's going to have a big smile ear to ear probably on
Yeah.
hearing this all. Get his ego going a little bit. So, Josh, if you're listening, there you go, buddy. But all that said, thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us. And if you're somebody who wants to get in touch with her, we'll make sure the links are at the bottom. And it could be for helping out with I guess is that a nonprofit?
Yes, it is a nonprofit.
Okay, for the nonprofit, helping out with the son, and I know there's still costs going on with that, and still some help in the community there. And maybe people want to reach out and just get to know you a little bit better. So you're a great person to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. To me, I'm just going through life, like
Oh, you're not.
Just-
You're,
just trailing.
yeah, but you've done good.
Yeah.
You've done real good. So, well, hey, thanks again. Remember to support our sponsors, and
Don't you want to tell everybody like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
There you go.
like and subscribe. Help us out. So, that being said, thank you guys so much. And next week, are we gonna have Trace? Have you got that one lined up yet? Maybe.
I think if I actually make the call and do it, we'll get them on.
All right, we'll try.
I can say it's 100%. If I make a call, it's 100%.
All right, well,
I haven't made the call, so it's 0% right now.
kind of like those baseballs right there that still need to be signed.
He was in the other day. I feel like that's kind of on you. I told you I'm bringing these in so that we can get these signed when we're in, because it's hard to navigate. We forgot. It's my fault.
My fault.
No, it's my fault.
All right, my fault
My
too.
fault. My fault.
All right, well, hey, thank you guys so much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. You're safe.